loyalty described as, do you care? And I care, and that's why I'm on this show. Comes a time, here we go.
I'm a sucker for Oteil, man. I saw that same feeling that I have, that would he filled a void that I didn't even know existed.
It feels so good to, as Ben said, to try to do something about an issue as opposed to complaining.
If you can't help, don't hurt.
If we could just all get out there and throw cream puffs at each other, maybe things instead of bullets and angry words, it would be better.
When you stop laughing, you stop living.
There's a worldwide surge in interest in mushrooms.
It was deep, man.
It's not that TM makes your mind quiet down there. It already is. We're just stuck up here. We've lost access.
And Jumpin' Jack Flash came out by the Stones. So I thought, all right, perfect, man. I'm gonna drive. And I started driving through the neighborhood, and I got a text from Mick Jagger.
People saying that, you know, what we do is non-essential. Well, playing those few gigs that you saw me at felt pretty essential to me.
It wasn't like they were clapping from here. It was they were clapping from here.
My view of things is that death is the last and best reward for a life well lived.
Like it's the strangest of places if you look at it right, you know?
If you're liking what you're hearing, head on over to patreon.com/comesatimepod and get your bus pass for an extra episode every week.
Welcome back to another episode of Comes a Time Podcast. That's Oteil.
And that's Mike.
You're this way. Hi, how are you, pal?
I'm sweaty. I need a shower now. What a doozy of a podcast, man.
That was a push-up of a...
Big Steve.
Big
coming
Steve,
in
the third time.
hot.
Yeah.
He called me. He was like, I watched the other two podcasts and they're great, but I got something different I want to talk about. I was like, come on, brother, let's do it, And wow, he had to get that off his chest. I'm really glad, and I'm in full agreement.
Yeah, Steve's got keys to the house, man. Anytime he wants to come throw a party, he's more than welcome, and he knows that. And he's a steel trap of a. I'm blown away and so enamored and so jealous of his mind. And he remembers things. He remembers history. He remembers facts. He he's got a lot. He always gets asked about the Grateful Dead. He always gets asked about the road. He always gets, so I'm glad he chose here to talk about other stuff,
Yeah. And he's been through so much.
Yeah.
You're not going to put one over on him.
No.
He's been checking stuff out since 65.
Well,
he's seen it all.
And you know what? Like living that life and being on the road and going from town to town and city to city and country to country and all that, and being around the most talented people and being around the most the dead what do you call it? Magnetize or brought
orbits.
Like people. I'm trying to think of, what does a magnet do? What does a magnet do? A magnet attracts. The dead attracted such smart people, such intrepid people, such visionary people,
brilliant and bold minds.
Yeah, and probably the craziest son of a bitches too, but he got to see all of it and to be able to steel trap memory, all that, and then put it through his own process and figure out his way. I mean, it's unbelievable to talk to. We've talked about it in the past. We're talking to history books. We're talking to monuments. We're talking to museums.
He's sounding the alarm.
Yeah.
It's an alarm you should listen to.
Yeah, he's awesome.
When I see what him and Bill Walton both are talking about recently about what's going on in the country, he's like, hey, man, he did it once already, Yeah. He sees the cycle of repeating because he reads history, and it's a good podcast. You guys are gonna Yeah, I need to go jump in the pool, man. That was a ride. That was a ride. I love it.
Yeah, he's awesome. Thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone for listening. And come over and join us on Patreon, everybody. Come over and join us at patreon.com/comesatimepod for a bonus episode each week and some extra content. And we love you so much. Stay safe and be kind to each other during these holidays. And always. Later.
Actually, I'll tell you, no, that one's Shakedown Street, and that one's great. What do you call it? American Beauty.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Beautiful.
So what's up, man? How you doing? We're glad to have you back.
So great to see you, Steve.
Here's the thing, guys. I know I've been on the show twice now, and through the wonders of modern technology, I was watching YouTube, and then it came up something about me on something else. And then the next thing was our first podcast together. And it was good. It was great. You know, the three of us interacted, and it was nice. And there were good stories. And then the second one was okay too, but it was too much similarity for me. I didn't like that. And it made me, you know, it's like a thing when you don't ever see your own image in a mirror or something. I saw something there. And so I decided I was going to do something today. It fired me up. And so I called O'Teal the next day. It was like I was fired up. And I said, please give me a shot one more time because I owe it to you guys. Do one that's going to blow your mind because I'm going to give you guys an exclusive of things I never talked about before. This isn't going to be just Jerry. This is an inside thing completely.
Nice.
And it's not about Jerry standing on the stage in front of the world with his guitar. It's not about any of that. It's about our lives in a whole other level, way down deep that nobody really knows about because we never talked about it. Nice. And it's something that has to do with everything that you guys are involved with. And it's fired me up right now. When you look at what's going on in this world, man, somebody has to start standing up and being counted now. And that's something that Jerry was a very brave guy in his own way, even though he always told me, I said, Jerry, you're Leo the lion. He goes, Steve, I'm more like the Wizard of Oz, the cowardly lion. That's how he really identified with that character. And our lives, from the very moment we met, were wrapped up in the arts and what we knew about culture. So when I first met Jerry, we talked about movies and songs and songwriting and everything deep. And then Hunter, when Ramrod and I moved Jerry and Hunter, I met Hunter and Jerry together. Then Hunter and I also had this cultural interaction and a thing that he was able to talk to me and I was able to talk to him. And so I was like, the other guys on the crew were all very intelligent guys, but they didn't have the schooling that I had from being a city kid growing up in New York City. Yeah. When I went to school in the 50s in New York, you learned, it was like going to college, I realized, anywhere else, you know, because I was a dropout, I was a juvenile delinquent, I was a street kid, but I still had this mind that it drove me on to read about history and all about current events and what was going on around me, everything geopolitical and everything that had to do with science and nature and arts. And so there I come as this wild street kid. It fit so perfect for me to meet Ramrod. And now him and those guys, they came from Pendleton, way up in Eastern Oregon. It wouldn't be anything but the Grateful Dead would have brought us together in that moment. And the reason how everything happened from that moment on and my whole life was always like a destiny thing, see? Mm-hmm. And so Jerry and Hunter would have these amazing cultural intercourses of talking about things all the time. We did a lot of discourse and talking. And I was always a great talker in that way. Now, I want to diverse for a second here. And O'Teal, you're going to love what I'm going to tell you right now, because I just discovered this. I studied history my whole life and been fascinated by it. I think my father instilled it in me as a small child. 7 years old, he took me to Washington and took me everywhere, you know. And so I learned what all those documents were. And we went to the archives and we went to the Smithsonian and we went to everywhere. And in those days, this is 1957, it was different. It was not like it is now out there on that mall. It was really, they had stuff like Grant's saddle. They had stuff like the skull of a World War I soldier. A bullet had gone into his skull right in the middle and he lived for another 20 years, you know, walked off the field. Stuff like that would make you know, and they had, George Washington's spurs and boots, things that put me into history deep under my nails. And then I meet the Grateful Dead. And here is a dream come true. you get to go around the world now, and you get to go with these guys. And I want to tell everybody something today. If anybody who ever sees this thing is going to learn that the Grateful Dead was American patriots to our heart and soul. Every one of us, man.
Yeah.
Every stinking one of us. We were not. We also were against what we saw. We had to suffer with Vietnam. We lost friends and brothers, and the guys had to go in the Army. Jerry was in the Army, and Hunter was in the Army, and Mickey was in the Air Force. You know, everybody knew the sacrifices we had to make, and the rest of us were in jail half the time, the crew guys, you know. So we had trouble with the law, and then they wanted to put us in the Army, and then drugs kept us out. It's ironic. And the thing is that then when you realize that you've grown, because the people that raised us, now Jerry and Phil were the oldest, you know, Phil was 10 years older than me. I was the youngest. So we encompassed that generation. So we were raised by the guys who fought World War II, and then all of our uncles and everybody around us. That's all you heard when you were a kid, the war. And now what's up? So I got to tell you something. When this country was founded, sorry to get so excited, guys.
No,
when
man.
this country was founded, Benjamin Franklin we were so lucky to have that man. He didn't start off being perfect. He had a lot of prejudices. He had slaves for a while. Slaves were all over in America, in the North and the South, before the country was formed. And then as the country formed, people started changing things and having different ideas in the South and the North began to form. But also the British tyranny drove Americans together, the colonies together, to resist the tyranny of England, right? So then after a long, hard fight, comes the real fight now, the politics of this country. A lot of people don't know this, but Benjamin Franklin was so genius a man and so worldly because he had been around the world in France and some other places in Europe. And he had a great way of writing and expressing himself. So this is amazing. They were trying to figure out, how do we form a government? How do we do this? What do we start with here even? And a lot of people don't know this, that Jefferson and Franklin got together with some other guys in the delegations and they talked about something. And they modeled our government partially after the British parliamentary systems, and Rome. It all goes back to Greece, where democracy started in Greece, long ago. But the idea of a Senate and a representative of the people coming together is democracy, the voice of the people, demo, in the Greece. And so what they did, what they studied was that. They knew all about that. But they went to the Iroquois nation. The Iroquois did it perfectly. See, they were all across upstate New York, and they put together all these tribes: the Utica, the Oneida, the Mohawks, all these different tribes in a confederation together. And they had councils, and they worked out their problems, and they didn't war against each other, and they stayed tight like that.
Wasn't it called the Iroquois Convention? Isn't that what they called it?
Then they called it the Iroquois Confederacy.
The Iroquois, the
Confederation of the Iroquois tribes. They took the name of the strongest tribe, but they were all also individually. They had their beautiful longhouses where they would meet. And so Franklin studied their ideas, and he put that into what we called in this country the Articles of Confederation. And that became the first thing they tried. And they met over it. They went back and forth. And a thing came up. And this is going to blow your minds. It blew my mind. People, I mean, you don't learn this stuff unless you dig into history. Franklin was realizing the weakness of the Articles of Confederation, where the states were a lot of power, but they didn't really want to answer to a federal government. And so the Southerners wanted to keep slaves, and they were no way going to not do it. And their reason is disgusting. Their reason was that, this is what they said at the convention. Well, we're not going to be out in the hot sun working and doing that. These people are made for that. They're built that way. This is the hubris these people had in their minds. They didn't even think about the humanity around them in that way. They only knew what they knew. But Franklin's mind was so amazing. he wondered, how are we going to get this settled? How are we going to let people have their way? Now, he came up with the compromise of the House of Representatives to go by population, and then each state having 2 senators. That was a big compromise. It really took a lot to get that worked out. Then the slavery thing was bugging Franklin. So he wrote an essay, but he wrote it in a different way. He wrote the essay saying that he was a Muslim prince in Tripoli. Now, Tripoli is Libya. And so the pirates of Tripoli were famous in that time. When you went near their waters, they snatched your ships and they stole the women and they enslaved the men. The women went to harems and men went, if whoever they were, they went to hard labor.
Yeah.
And so he turned it around and he said, oh, I am the, he called him the Sheikh Abu Dhazi, something. I don't remember the name exactly, but he wrote this letter and he published it everywhere. And it said this, that, oh, yes, we would not work in the hot sun, but our white captives are perfect for that. They do it. They don't even complain because we take the whip to them if they do. And if they fucking women complain, they get killed and the men get killed. We don't play with that. And they're in chains, their whole life in chains. And then all of a sudden, the North, a lot of the states realized what was happening and they made a compromise. Okay, you could keep it below the Mason-Dixon line. And so that just blew my mind to understand how deep they were thinking about everything, and trying to get it right. Now, they didn't get it right. And so what that left us was America that had this wound. And I was lucky to go everywhere in this country. I've been everywhere, every nook and cranny, and accepted in great ways. And I've met people in Alabama that I love them, man. They're great people of all kinds. I've met people in every state of the union that are friends. I know that people are good people. They're all good Americans, But then you get these other things that come in, these other factors.
Yeah,
and
it's money too. It's money that drives.
The money and the greed has taken over our country, and the heartlessness. You see, we cared about each other for a long time.
They go together, though. Greed and heartlessness can't be extricated from each other, because that's why you always hear is, "Oh, it's just business," which means it's just war. That's war. There's no. You have to be heartless if you're going to be greedy. It's terrible because what we were so not stupid, but we in the Grateful Dead, we became hippies, and so this whole hippie thing came and, oh, you know what? We knew all about politics and all this stuff that I'm talking about. We knew it, and it was so heavy in those days with the same shit happening. We lived through the civil rights. We lived through all these other changes. Man. Watergate.
And Watergate and everything. And we were in the middle of a lot of this shit. And then the FBI was always after us because of Owsley and drugs, and they would follow us around and send informants on us. And the Hells Angels brought informants that they didn't even know about. And you think something? We knew all about it. But I'll tell you guys something. We were true Americans. We didn't hate the FBI. We knew they were trying to figure out what was going on, and we don't care. We knew. What's his name at that time? J. Edgar Hoover was a sick person. And he was always hating the hippies and always hating blacks and always hating anybody that wasn't normal because he was a pervert. He was a complete freak. And so that's what everyone is, a freak. And this is what Jerry and Hunter teach me, that everyone's a fucking messed up freak. And so that is what art's about. Mike, you go on stage and you do comedy. And one time you and me are going to do a comedy show together. I thought about that. Because we'll get out there and we'll do it the way it is. You can't prepare for it. You have to go out there and put your life out on the line, stick your neck out.
I know.
And so when you do that in showbiz in any way, or an artist or anybody, you are doing something for the betterment of the world and the betterment of society and people in general. Because there's so much, everything is a battle between good and evil. It really is. Yes. And good and evil can take people's hearts. Just what we're talking about. The greed for money and the being materialistic. Jerry never cared about money. That was something I noticed about him right away. He cared about it because we all needed, your wives want it, the kids need to get children. Sure, he wanted to provide for them, but he cared about everybody else. He would tell me, pay that, after the end of the show, you give that guy a little more. He's a musician and he doesn't ever work, man. And to have that heart, and you're not now. That don't even exist in showbiz now, man.
No, it does. It does. Huh? I'm trying to keep it alive. Well, I do that myself. I'm like, man.
I meant on a lot of levels of corporate showbiz.
Sure.
I don't
corporate. Yeah.
But when you see the ticket prices, when you see the way everybody is trying to make up for things and inflate everything right now, there's more greed than ever. There would be no inflation if everybody would calm down. And like Jerry always used to tell me, something Jerry said just popped in my head. He would say, there would always be the national debt. They're showing it. He'd say, who do we owe it to? Let's wipe it out. Forget it. Start over. We're so hard on ourselves with this machinery, and the Industrial Revolution changed everything. But what I want to get to this point now, I know I'm talking my ass off, and I'll shut up in a minute.
Keep going.
But I'm fired up about this. And, like Hunter was such a deep intellectual, okay, and such a great human being on every level, and a humble person also. And he would read people like Marcel Proust. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him, but I didn't until he explained to me about how he would read Remembrance of Things Past. It's a book where Proust wrote about, he said there's a chapter or two on the wallpaper in the room, and the detail of life, every detail. And when Hunter told me that he read that whole book, I said, wow, I don't think I could do that, Bob. How did you get through that? And he told me, he says, because life is detailed like that, man. And he could see that art thing and explain it to me, And then when we traveled around everywhere we went, Jerry was an artist, and so he loved art. And we also would go to visit places all around where we knew there were statues and there were things that were rare and artful buildings. And even in every city in America in those days, and they're still like that. There was still a lot of older buildings. You could see the architectural changes of America and how it grew. And so Hunter wrote the songs of America. I started thinking about how he wrote, and it blew my mind when he wrote Uncle John's Band. The first days are the hardest days. Don't worry anymore. Because
when life is like
Easy Street, there's danger at your door.
Yeah.
And that was a brilliant thing for me to learn at that time, because then you don't get too cocky about anything when a line like that goes into your heart.
Right.
When he would come across like that, and I would get to be there to see their songs born out of words like that and amazing musical talents, that was a gift. And so now I only pay it back. My radio show, I got a radio show. I'm going to do this on my radio, so I do it anyway. But I just wanted to give you guys a shot to hear about some of this stuff. Now, Phil was an amazing intellectual of all kinds, but also he liked to hang and be wild like we were too, and take drugs and do everything and enjoy life. And so none of us voted until Ronald Reagan became president. We all that was it for us.
That'll do it.
Then we finally said and we all started voting after that and making people vote with us and getting our audience organized that way. It was a laziness on our part, because we thought if you just drop out of the system, it's going to go away. It doesn't go away. No. It'll come and put its big old hand on your throat pretty quick.
Yeah,
it's like I got Grizzly Peak, and We're Pot is doing very well all over, you think? Now, if this election had just gone a whole different way, that just it would be going the other way. Trust me, because you hear what they say and listen to the words of those people. They say they're coming after drugs. Yeah. Give them a chance. Let them go. Let those wild dogs go. But
I think they want to go after gay marriage first.
Excuse me?
I think they want to go after gay marriage first. Because they like to smoke weed. They smoke weed too. I live in Florida and they just legalize weed. They smoke weed.
Florida's going to change again. Like Florida, I spent a lot of time there. I know Florida's wild as the wind.
It's the Wild West.
Right now, you pull a couple of strings this way, it looks this way. You pull a couple of lights that way, it looks this way.
Yeah.
And there's things that are happening with people getting lied to and pushed around. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you guys something, okay? You know, a lot of people don't know this, but we were American youth. Everybody in the Grateful Dead, we grew up in the 40s and 50s as our youthful years, and then the 60s.
Yep.
Yeah.
We shot guns. We all owned guns. And we got together, but we didn't shoot at people. We shot, we called planking is what we called it. And we would go and be, you know, have fun on a barbecue day. We'd all get together, everybody. Jerry had guns, Phil, you name it, Pigpen, everybody. But we weren't, that was what we were raised with. And
you were cowboys.
Because you see, that was one thing. But then also all the guys, all the servicemen that came back still had weapons around. And you'd see, you go to any kid's house in the 50s, they'd open a drawer and show you, here's my old man's gun. It's Colt Commander. He carried it all over Europe. You know, we were taught not to touch him or go near him. You know, we knew the difference. But it was a world of guns. We knew it, but we didn't, no one was going to, if we had to fight, if we had beefs, we were taught to use our fists. And that's not the best thing either. Because when words ran out, we fought, but our fathers didn't come and say, oh, don't do that. They let us work it out, you see? And then we got to be friends. If you fought a guy, he was your friend for the rest of your life. You know, it's a crazy thing. And
instead of being dead.
In the Grateful Dead, it happens sometimes, you know, but we never brought guns on the road. Never, ever, ever. And then as the years went on and we had families, they took locked up, gone out of sight. Nobody ever needed them around. But what's happening now in this country is so twisted and wrong. It's getting me angry to a point where I see the news every day and they're killing children and they're killing people that would never even expect them to come in. They come in the most sneaky place, in a synagogue where you're praying, in a gay nightclub where people are dancing and hugging and kissing or whatever they're doing.
Or didn't somebody just hit a Walmart?
An employee at a Walmart shot up a Walmart while people were shopping for Thanksgiving, supplies.
And you've seen Bill Walton's posts lately, haven't you? Whoa.
I sure have. I just did a thing with him. Yeah.
I saw right up onto his porch in his backyard, just like, man, it's very dystopian. What's happening right now?
Why that happens? I'll explain that to you. A lot of people don't realize this. This is why we started voting against Reagan. All over California and all over America, there were these hospitals that we used to laugh at when I was a kid. That's the nut house. That's the nut house. That's the hospital, the state hospital. That's the federal hospital. And they had them all over California. So people were sick or in trouble in their mind. They had a place to go. You take them there. And they would hold you for observation. He did away with all that in California. Then every state, you save all that money, they shut it down. So where'd they go? They went to the streets. They went out in the streets. And then now we got problems with young, disoriented youth picking up these machine guns and fucking getting them anywhere they want when they're aged without any questions asked. And look what they do. It's going to get bad. It's going to get bad.
It is getting bad already.
It says here, the New York Times put out a thing today that says there have been at least 606 mass shootings in the U.S. so far this year. So that's minus the 31 days of, it's basically 2 a day, basically around 2 a day this year.
A mass shooting.
Mass shootings.
Wow.
And that sucks because you get used to that then.
Right. And that's desensitized. That's the problem.
Day after day of seeing these horrible things, you say, why?
I was in the store.
Huh?
I was in the store not long ago, maybe a couple of months ago.
Right.
And it wasn't a loud bang or anything. Something had recently happened. I forget what it was. Yeah. But I was just in the store and little voices in your head sometime. It just was like, if guns started being fired right now, what would you do right this second?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking back door, meat locker. Where's the bathroom? I'm just like, wow, I have to sit here and think about this right now. Because what if I'm in here and I got my 2 kids with me who are 4 and 7? I got to know. I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here. It's really crazy, man. It's crazy.
That's why they had that thing. They said, run, fight, something and fight was the last one. Run, hide, or fight. They're now saying forget about that. It doesn't work, you know. And it didn't work in Uvalde, Texas, when there was 45 cops out there, man, with machine guns too. They were scared. They were told they were scared to go in or whatever. I'll never understand that. Never for my life will I understand how they could do that. But
they weren't really cops. They just had the
people,
uniforms, the equipment.
Yeah.
You know,
that's what they said. But if you look at the films, even then, when they had things, you see, a hero doesn't need the armor.
No.
That guy in the Colorado situation, he jumped on that guy, and then other people went in. A lady starts putting her high heels in the guy's face, and you see that's how it works. And there are certain people that are not going to run, and certain people are not going to hide. They're going to jump that guy. And then we've had a few of those happen too. And that's when it works. It doesn't work when everybody packs guns, though, man. It's going to get
it's a lot of crossfire.
It is getting close to that. Yeah.
And the people, let me tell you, I got to say one thing about history again. George Washington, the father of our country, we were all raised with this myth about the Minutemen. They all were we were told, oh yeah, from Lexington and Concord came the farmers with their muskets off the shelf, man, and off the mantelpiece, and they formed there and we're ready to fight the British. Not quite. It took 2 or 3 years. You got to remember, in those days, those were skirmishes that started. And then Washington built the Continental Army. He built an army of trained soldiers. And he had guys like Kosciuszko, who was a Polish general, come here and train our troops. He had German guys like Steuben, General von Steuben, up in the north of New York State, trained the guys along the Mohawk Valley. And these people came together as an army. They were trained as soldiers. The militiamen who came from all these other places, they dressed like Indians. They went out there and they fought dirty. And Washington wrote in his diary clearly, he said, give me more Continental soldiers. I'll win this war. But I can't do it with the militiamen. They mutilate the British dead. They commit atrocities on everybody. And they're uncontrollable. They're not disciplined. They're not an army. And that's what we have, you know, when people think that those kind of things are the way to go, that's not the American way.
Yeah.
That's not the way. You get your gun, like in World War II, guys after Pearl Harbor, they lined up and they went there.
Yeah.
You know what? When you were talking about voting, Steve, I've always thought about the thing that I saw that Jerry said once, and it was like choosing the lesser of an evil is still choosing an evil, right? But it's so hard when like, you have to vote defensively. When it's like, if you're going to vote and you don't love either side, or the side you do love is getting ignored by the mainstream media or by the, you know, then you have to go like, well, what's the defensive choice, right? Like, what's the best choice for humanity?
There's defense right there. You know, he said that, and I know he said it. He say it all the time. But he was living in that time. That quote was from the early 70s. And he was living in a time where we were still blindfolded. We were protected. We grew up in the most beautiful utopian country at that time. It was payback to all the veterans, man. They had houses. That's why the Grateful Dead were created. And we were able to say, fuck it, man. We get to party now. We get to make up for everything. But my theory goes into deep magic, too. And so you got to put each person in their time and place. And Jerry,
of course. Yes.
There, you know, so he didn't. He now would say a very different thing when he saw the dangers at our door now, man. It wasn't like that then. Politics was so different until they made it a war. They changed something. It used to be that when Democrats and Republicans went to Washington, the idea was they became the government together, not separate. That started from some bad things in media, and it's always been there. Hearst tried to do it in the 30s and 20s.
William Randolph
he started
Hearst.
wars. This is not new stuff. And then Fox just copied him. And they did the same thing. And they poison. When you lie to the people, it's poison.
Well, it's all the propaganda against marijuana and stuff too, you know?
And it was a war. They called it the war on drugs.
Yep.
So we're going to put that kind of money behind it.
Yeah. And I don't mean that against Jerry. I love what Jerry said. And I think about that a lot. And I just think it sucks because when both options stink, sometimes it's
I bet in the 80s and 90s, he was probably voting defensively. Like after the Reagan thing, after Reagan, you were just like, what? I remember when all those people hit the streets, man, when Reagan closed all those insane asylums is what I called them. I don't know if that's politically correct anymore, but they were all on the streets, and I'm from Washington, D.C. And I remember going to my mom, like, Mom, what is going on? There's like crazy people are everywhere, just on the streets. And she was like, well, Reagan closed all the places, it's just like, wow, it was an overnight transformation. And now it's like that on steroids. I mean, that was in the 80s, early 80s,
The arts and everything that Jerry was about. I was going to go into about how movies affected our lives. And so you all know the story of It's a Wonderful Life, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Shows it so clearly. You're either going to go to Potterville and make it into Potterville, let those guys, the money lending wrong people who want to take everything, let it happen that way, or you let the Building and Loan Society go where everybody owns their houses together.
Yeah.
They're scared of that stuff, but that's what really we're based on. All of us, we need each other. We're not, we're just as much an animal that needs each other as anybody. If we're isolated, it doesn't work. Working together is the best way. And so Jerry would say that. He started calling America when Reagan took over. We're in Potterville now. And it started before that. You see, the Kennedys were not perfect. They were criminals in a lot of ways too. But when they
bootleggers, right? The daddy?
Oh, they go back to big bootleggers.
All those guys are legit now. The Bronfmans with Seagrams. They were gangsters. They were bootleggers.
Their father, Joe Kennedy, was made ambassador to England, and he sent bottled and bond Johnny Walker to the whole mafia here. It landed in New York with my grandfather distributed it for him. But the thing is, we knew he was a crook. And then when his kids were, and his family were killed because they double-crossed the bad people. You got involved with the mob, they're eventually going to get you. Now, and I tell people over and over again, watch The Godfather and you'll see exactly what happened in America. Michael stands with his wife and he tells her, we're going to get legit in 5 years.
In 5 years.
We're turning into lawyers. We're turning into senators now. Now you see that and Reagan was the first front for a true mob backing.
Yeah. And so Trump is like the fucking ultimate.
He didn't know what he was doing. They used him like a puppet.
He was an actor.
True criminal. Now we got to the true criminal in there, finally.
Yeah.
Because they're temporary employees, right? They're temporary employees. They're there for 4, maybe 8 years, and then they're out.
I tell you who was not temporary. Bush Sr. was slick, man. Bush Sr. was head of the CIA, then vice president, then president, and his son was president. Yeah, dude. He was not the same type of player like a Carter or an Obama or Trump or
Clinton.
Clinton's pretty thick. They go back. I heard the Clintons and Bush just went back to England, but I don't know if that's
nobody was saying that we couldn't all get along. It was just that
totally.
People try to pull in different directions, so different ways, and they don't even understand what the consequences are going to be from doing stuff like that. And so it really is true. We got now to where we had a crooked president in there to just try to undo all that. Look what it's going to take us now, man. And I don't care now. It's time to stand up for truth and reality and the American way.
It's the hard thing.
Much as any of them. We got just as our people died here and lived here just as much as they did.
Yep.
The difficulty is in unifying people that, when you look at the income inequality and how it's just been astronomical since Reagan, right? Now they take a good portion of that money, billions, trillions are spent making sure that we don't realize we should get along. I mean, you always think about it. It's like, wow, they had this thing, the 1%. It's like, well, if there's 99% of us and one of them, why is this so hard? Like, if we all stop shopping at Walmart for 5 days, literally, or less, the whole game could change, right? But there's so many people, there's so much money spent on keeping us divided. So we'd rather have somebody to blame than actually figure out what's really going on and blame the right people. We're blaming horizontally instead of vertically. The 1% up there in a very small amount, and they're not lazy and they're not dumb. They spend a lot of money, time, and energy making sure that we stay divided. You know, it's a hard thing to beat, that tribalism.
A strong middle class makes a strong, and the places that have that have always succeeded. And we had that. Franklin Roosevelt went from that.
Oh, that's communism, though. That's You know, now that's what they turned it into. Now having a strong middle class is socialism. I'm like, that's capitalism. Good long-term capitalism.
That was aggressive capitalism. See, when the wall fell, we didn't have communism to balance it anymore. And a lot of people don't know that the Moscow Red Cross in 1917, during the First World War, the Russian Revolution started, and they left the war. And they had their own war in Russia. And it's now been proven that Wall Street bankrolled the Bolshevik revolution. It came down to a civil war in Russia between the white Russians, the Bolsheviks, and the Reds. And they backed the Reds, and the Reds won. And so there was communism of the worst kind for a while. But it wasn't ever the real, not like Marx wrote it. Marx wrote it for a strong middle class, really.
Yes, look, any man-made system, money can corrupt. It's like, it doesn't matter. Capitalism, communism, socialism, thisism, thatism.
Slavery.
Money can corrupt it. I mean, slavery is the ultimate form of capitalism, just the cheapest labor.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it's that vampire capitalism. You know what I mean? And so but it's a tough thing because those few people have had generations, hundreds of years, millennia at manipulating the poor and keeping them against each other. Like you said, if you give everybody a good job, reasonable health care, a cheap flat screen, a cheap meal, everybody's fine. You can have the Klan living over here and the Nation of Islam living over there, and everybody's fine because everybody's got a job, food on the table, their kids.
We could have gone on like that, O'Keel, but
I'm with you 100%.
They started playing dirty on one side, and they went to push it so far as to take away checks and balances. This is not good for America. America's based on that handshake agreement of checks and balances.
But they tipped it on both sides, though. Clinton deregulated the banks.
Of course.
Clinton deregulated the FTC, right? Yeah, so everybody went for the money, and you need that money from them to run. You always got to raise the money. They say, what are they spending? More than half their time raising money.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time
stealing,
serving, being public servants. These are some rich ass public servants, man. I didn't know. It's hard, man. When everybody sells out, it's like, man, it's frustrating. But I'm with you. The solution is still, for everyone, if we can get everyone to realize you are the 99%, you could sit on your hands. If we all go, we're going to sit on our hands for 5 days, the whole game will change because you know what? It interrupts the flow of their freaking money. And that's the one thing they can't take. We could change Walmart in 5 days. We could change a lot of stuff in 5 days. Amazon. I mean, the Amazon conditions, people can't poop. Yeah. How much? That's like, that's like some slave shit. You can't go take a dump. Like, what?
Unions were the balance to slavery, and they had to be so tough, the unions, to get by. And that was what happened.
But then money corrupted them.
Money corrupted them.
It's like, it's always the same.
Workers get spoiled. My dad told me, he was big in the Teamsters. He told me, he said, watch, we're giving them everything. Then one day they'll be spoiled. And sure enough, guys didn't want to come to work. They said, can't get fired. You got to have heart.
Yeah, it's like tenure. It's like getting
miles of heart to live.
That's true,
and to do all this. You can't give up. Every day you got to wake up and get out there and keep pushing, because otherwise you steamrolled over by something.
Yep.
I mean, you see it swirling like these tent cities, man.
What's up, everybody? This is Mike, and today's show is sponsored by Sunset Lake CBD, a Vermont hemp farm crafting affordable CBD products designed to help with stress and sleep without breaking the bank.
Sunset Lake CBD is a majority employee-owned hemp farm located just outside of one of our favorite places, Burlington, Vermont. For years, Sunset Lake was a dairy farm producing milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. We had them on the podcast. In 2019, they diversified and started growing hemp for CBD.
And Sunset Lake CBD crafts products with hemp grown on their family farm and ships them directly to the customer, cutting out all the cost associated with getting on the shelves at stores. They have CBD products for every occasion and offer tinctures, salves, edibles, coffee, smokables, and even for that anxious dog of yours, they have pet products.
Ooh, I need to get some for my dog that's barking all the time. But I'll tell you this, I use these. The Sour Bears.
So good.
They are CBD gummies. I literally, no joke, I take these every night. They help me sleep. And it's almost bedtime.
Yep. And I still, as said it before, I'll say it again. You go to a long show, you come home, my 42-year-old ankles are not what they used to be. And I rub that salve all over them and put them up, enjoy a nice cocktail, and just let it ooze right into those sore bones. And you know what, folks? All you Comes a Time fans, if you check them out at sunsetlakecbd.com and use promo code TIME, T-I-M-E, you'll get 20% off all products. That's sunsetlakecbd.com. Use promo code TIME, 20% off all products. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer-owned, Vermont-grown. Thank you.
Get you some.
I just was on tour, just doing dates with my band, St. Louis. Like, where did we go? Everywhere I went, in the hotel, I go walking. I put on my flip-flops, I go walking. And everywhere I felt scared. And I was like, and another thing that was weird, I was like, I can't wear flip-flops. I'm looking at something, I'm like, I slipped in something. I was like, wow, was that human feces I just slipped in? Man, it did a number on my brain, and I just went back to the room. I cleaned off my sandals. I was like, you can't wear sandals. You can't wear flip-flops. You got to wear shoes. And now,
it's like you moved to New York.
Well, if I got to run, if I got a zombie over here, a meth zombie starts chasing me.
It would be worse. I always thought it would be better to build cabins or rows of small. They did it during the earthquake in San Francisco, and they put San Francisco in all these temporary homes, and they had it patrolled. Police. You have to have some security there because people are people.
Dude,
but
we got all these empty buildings, tons of empty buildings sitting here that people could live in. Some people are squatting in them, in like Detroit, outside of Detroit and stuff.
We're in a heartless place now, man. We're back to the place we were before the Depression again. People don't realize that. You know why all the farmers loved Franklin Roosevelt? Because he did everything to get them back on their feet, man. When it was nature that blew the topsoil away. It was crazy things they did, thinking that there was a never-ending topsoil in the plains. It wasn't like that. It was wrong science in that way. But they didn't listen. And so he then saved their lives with relief and everything, and people were ready to work. Now
people want to work.
Yeah.
The reason why our vegetables are up is because these people won't let the workers in to pick them. Americans don't pick the vegetables. They don't do that anymore. When I was a kid, I still knew white sharecroppers that actually did that stuff. Yeah. Man, I met them in my travels.
Levon Helm's family. That was Levon's people.
Levon Helm. And other people that I know, man, that they made it by showbiz. They got in there and got away from it, man.
Dude, the singer in my band and Oteil and the Peacemakers from, what was it, 2000, let's say 2. on Paul Hinton. His parents, he's from Cleveland, Tennessee. And his parents were both preachers. They were like, or his dad was a preacher, started preaching when he was 16. Just super Southern accent. He would say, man, we're country's cow shit, you know? And so I remember asking him, I was like, because I assumed I lived in Alabama for 18 years and I lived in the deep South since, you know, for the last 35. And I remember asking I said, man, I hate to stereotype anyone, but I just kind of assumed coming from DC that anybody over a certain age that's white down here is probably racist. You know, I was like, how are your parents not racist? I met him. I hung with them. She cooked incredible breakfasts for us where she made 5 different kinds of syrup from scratch. You know, I was just like, I didn't know there were 5 different kinds of syrup, you know? And he said, well, man, my parents were in the fields picking cotton with black people or picking whatever they were picking.
Yeah.
He said, so we were all treated kind of the same, you know? And I was just like, wow, man. And he ended up doing music to, you know,
because
they went into the church.
Hunter wrote sea shanties and he gave them to me and he wanted me to teach them to the crew when we used to put up the wall of sound because we used to haul them up with line and block. The other guys wouldn't get into it, but it was lift that bale kind of thing, you know. Yeah. And sea shanties and those work songs have always been with the people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And everybody worked together. In the Depression, you know, it was still a lot of hate, man. Always blacks had to be on the bottom of the pile, man. Because,
well, the Indians probably had it worse than
the Indians had it first. Yeah, okay. But you know, when that hatred runs deep, it has to be ripped. It has to be put in and exposed in the light, and that
has to be educated out.
So people are not. When you talk about the people in the South, they aren't like their ancestors were. They're trying to be better. People in Germany aren't like the Nazis. Some of them are. Of course there's some.
Yep. Of course there's some.
It's like that. You can't, we're going to live with that forever. You can't do that. You know, that's
just people.
People are people.
Look at African governments like corrupt, like Mobutu or Nigeria, where my people are from. It's one of the most corrupt governments on earth. They sold out to the oil companies. They sold their own people out like that. You know, it's like a very small group of people are doing extremely well. And the rest of the people are like, you know, it's human nature. And it's an eternal battle. Eternal, you know?
Well, the thing is that it was that white man conquering the world and then the Industrial Revolution. There was a time when in Nigeria and in Africa, there were great civilizations and they had cities, and they took care of each other and fed each other and had water and everything they needed. Then the white man comes and he destroys the systems around. Well, the white men put in a sewer system in cities where it wasn't needed. They didn't know how to run it when they left, you know? And so they make everybody feel like they're stupid or something or not as smart as when really they had these things way before set up, aqueducts and things.
They were doing just fine.
Yeah, that whole idea of manifest destiny kind of like blew me away. Like when you learn about that, it's like, what the fuck? Seriously? Like this is just such bullshit.
That's Dick Cheney. If we win, then I guess we were right.
Well, it's like Dylan said, with God on our side, right? Like everybody thinks they have God on their side. But the thing is that scares me a lot now, Steve, is that like when you look at what the Dead and with you guys and with the fans and all the way through the years of that itinerancy of moving through the country, and you get to meet people and you get to learn stories and you get to realize, oh, this is reality. This is, everybody's got a different story. Every day leads up to this day. Like it says in Black Peter, you know, nowadays people can find their silo and block every other thing out and call that the truth. And you're operating from a place of fear, not love. And you go, everything else is wrong except this bubble I'm in or this Facebook group I'm in or this whatever. And that is that's terrifying.
That's really not new either, though.
No, not new.
That's
not at all.
Nature,
but I mean, on a social
for all
media
time, it's just my bubble is going to be my tribe or my county or my state or my country or my religion or my race or whatever. Like you pick a lane and like,
sure,
this is where I'm going to plant this flag and we're all going to die by it. Damn it. You know, like,
yeah. And then there's the people like us and like the dead that have decided to bypass all that and say, no, there's great people. Yeah, exactly. Human.
There are crossroads in history. There are crossroads in history where you can take the right path and they're going to come again. And people, you know, Kesey told me the first time that he and I met, and I said to him, man, how do you tell who everybody is? It's so crazy. He said, if they're polite, polite. And now people are getting so rude. I've never seen a level of rudeness like there is in this country now. It used to be people had patience. You can feel it on the highways when you drive.
Oh, man, people are getting shot here. My wife just told me about these two dudes that pulled over and shot at each other, and both of them had their daughters in their car.
Yeah.
They don't care. They go mad.
Nobody
What
cares.
the dude?
Yeah, nobody cares.
What?
It's madness.
What did you just show your children? Like,
wow. Yeah. It keeps breaking down, and there's some people think that other people are pushovers. No one's a pushover. No one's going to give their life up and their country and their home up without a fight. I'll tell you that. And that's trouble when you start thinking. Good people have to start thinking like that, because I'm tired of the bullies. Tired of bullies. I never liked them.
Me neither.
Yeah, man.
There were times when it happened to somebody in a schoolyard, and you get humiliated, or you learn to take care of it. But the thing is that a bully, I always noticed, if you stood up to a bully, all of a sudden there was no bully.
But it's hard when the bully's an institution.
Yes.
When an economic system can bully you, or Wall Street can bully you, or a corporation that's so big that it can literally bully you. Like the employees, the Twitter employees are getting bullied. Amazon employees are getting bullied. Walmart employees are getting bullied. Like it's like next level bullying. You know, it's
so
they're going to use AI to bully us and mechanical dogs.
Algorithms bully you.
It's going to be like Terminator, man. I swear to God, we're living the plot of Terminator.
Well, not only that, look at history repeats itself everywhere right now, man. The Ukraine times have wars started in that area. World War I, World War II. What if people never learn about some things? And
I know, right in the same spot.
There is a disgrace. It's a disgrace.
Yeah, it really is.
It means that people are going to have to fight again. There's going to be a lot of problems for a couple of years. There's going to be, what's going to happen is we have to get through another bunch of wars to get to the Aquarian Age, which is a time of 1,000 years of peace and prosperity, enlightenment again.
Yeah.
Look, and education have to come back.
Education. I think the war, if we could wage it and if we could put all our eggs even in one basket, for me, it would be education. And for this reason, because it's so much easier to educate yourself with the internet. It's like MK Ultra when they gave acid to everybody, they fucked around and gave it to Kesey. And the internet, and AI and all that can be used against us, but we can also use it. Watching the rate at which my children learn is staggering. Me and my wife are like, what the hell is going on? They learn so fast because of the internet. Now it's a double-edged sword for sure. But the way they perpetuate this thing, you notice both sides let education go by the wayside. Because if people are not educated, it's easier to keep them fighting against each other.
Excuse me, sir. I'd like to correct you on something. Reagan started this war on drugs, big time. So everything then, he got America so scared. You see, fear is how they do that to people. So then everybody was nuts. Oh my God, crack cocaine's gonna be, every kid's gonna have it. And so they went on a war on drugs, right? And I can tell you the whole history of how that went there. But
Iran-Contra, they were actually dealing the crack in the hood.
They just started building prisons. They never thought of building schools. Never. You see a thing to build schools. Never.
Yeah,
it's but prisons because that's what they wanted. It's just
but Clinton continued that. We can't just lay that on the Republicans. Like when we have control and we have majorities and super majorities,
do you know
doesn't
what
get fixed.
Wrong about that? Because it was George Bush's family that started the idea of private prisons, and they have to have workers in there. So they have to feed the system, and that is prisons for money. Prisons for money. Check it out, O'Teal. I don't mean
I'm not saying they didn't start it.
They didn't.
I'm not saying they did that. They started it. I'm saying why didn't they discontinue it when they had the super majorities?
Drugs should be okay. They didn't vote for the omnibus drug bill. That changed everything. In the omnibus drug bill, everything in there, and in the Patriot Act, everything is in there to take away from us.
I know, but both sides voted on that.
Voting rights. It was the Democrats. A couple of them would vote. But then all you people in town think, oh, he's going to let drugs in all our schools.
Yeah, but let's not forget.
It's going to be legal.
Biden was the one that wrote the omnibus drug bill.
I know. He was the most anti-marijuana person ever. I never expected him to do what he just did. But you see, he realized something, that they never were allowed to study marijuana. And now, because of the legalization in the states, universities are studying it. A report came out the other day, O'Teal. I've been smoking since 1965. I was 15 years old. And every day, all day long. And I'm telling you, I put my brain up against anybody's, and now they proved to me, they said it prevents dementia. It keeps your brain remembering things, not losing them. Because they don't even know where memory comes from and how we pull it out. It is an amazing medicine also. It's a gift. It was in the Bible. It's so silly when governments make bad laws and they stop the people. Look at
I'm just saying that's because of the money that the pharmaceutical industry knew. They were like, man, this thing is good for everything. We're going to not make a lot of money when we have all this stuff that we want to sell you for this. And this gives you these side effects. And we got a pill for that. And then that has 5 more side effects. And we got 5 more pills for that. Or they could just give you cannabis and just take a whole bunch of them and sweep them into the trash all at once. It's just money. It's always money making people, no matter what, sell out,
That's the way it is. We're stuck with this aggressive capitalism until it changes. And that's
until the education, until people's mindsets change. Because once they see, if you teach a person to think critically and you teach them some history and show them a cycle that repeats, right? And then they could zoom out and look at the big picture. My son does it at 7.
He doesn't have to deal with Taiwan and China wanting that island back. They've wanted it back since 1948. There was a man called Shek who took all the nationalist troops to China and took that island. They want it back, and they're not stopping. This is what started wars all the time. This is what started Hitler and his Lebensraum, he called it.
Real estate.
I need room. I need states around me. It's the same thing.
That's with Putin. Same thing with Putin and the Ukraine, the NATO expansion. He said you weren't going to come in. I wanted that breathing room.
But he's full of crap. They had to defend themselves because he was taking the Crimea and all these other places.
Exactly. It's always real estate. But I think I do. That's why my one hope, passionate people like you, and me, and Mike, and the internet. This internet is a game changer. People, they know I can go on YouTube and build a car. I could go on YouTube and do anything. I've learned so much of it. Every day I'm learning something on YouTube. That's what we're trying to do here with this. Get people to educate yourselves.
There's a lot of stuff you can get on there that has a perverted view of life.
Well, that's where the critical thinking comes in. You got to test stuff out, fact check, ask some other people, ask an expert. See, because the one thing I always see on YouTube is I read something and then I go, okay, now this guy thinks that's bullshit. All right, so now they're rebutting each other. Okay, I do that with my own thing. People think I'm a contrarian. I'm like, if I believe something, let me try the exact opposite opinion. I'm the prosecutor. Okay, let me play defender. I'm the defender. Let me play prosecutor just to see if what I believe holds up. I'm just testing it. I'm poking it. I'm prodding it. you know, and that's the only way I'm going to know. So if you could teach people to think critically, you could get through. I mean, I watched UFO podcasts and paranormal stuff. Boy, you talk about to sift through some bullshit. You know?
Well, yeah, because there's something to all that. You see, we don't
Yeah,
even
but
know.
then there's presidents and astronauts and generals and F-18 pilots and all these people that are legit. Right?
Well, you know, we create our own universe. We create the universe for what we all believe.
That's what
If
Colonel
we all
Bruce
believe
used to
something
say. Yep.
different, but there's something there. It's always been there. It used to come, and Jerry would always say, "Well, look, people in the Middle Ages, they saw brownies and spooks of different kinds. Now we see these people. They're the same looking things. They're basically the same. It's in the human element. It's something to do with where we all came from, or something we don't know."
Right.
Yeah.
It starts when you're a kid and you're laying out in a field. To me, one day I looked up at the sky and I couldn't stop staring at it, wondering where it ended. And it doesn't end. It's infinity. And it comes right back in through us, you see. And each one of us is stardust. And so my next book is Stardust to Dark Star, because that's what my life has been.
Yeah. Well, you said earlier you believe in that deep magic. That's what you said earlier. And that's
mystical
what
thing too.
You think about it, Mike, you know, wars. Whenever there's been wars in history, right after the war, there's a baby boom because the guys come home that are left and they want to make children again and they want to live life.
Yeah.
And then those are the souls of all the guys that were killed.
Wow.
It happens in every situation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Our souls are all the same.
About that.
Which Strom Thurmond might end up, he might be a black kid growing up in Detroit right now.
Oh, for sure he is.
And see how the next generation always changes and progresses moving forward. And that's them fixing what they couldn't.
Girl chasing rock and roll bands, man.
Well, you know what I think is really mystical? I think curiosity is mystical. And I've noticed one thing about so many people that I love, like my brother or any of the artists that have just mesmerized me, you, Mike, they're curious. And if you're curious, you know, one of the things you're going to be curious was like, how did this stuff get so messed up like this? So you inevitably get curious about history.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you're curious about the history of music or the history of comedy, and then you learn that in the context of the history that they grew up in, and that gets you into history. Or like Mike got into history because of Bob Dylan.
Right.
You know, I got into history because we were being black and history was beating your ass. Yeah. So you better figure out where the blows are coming from and why. And, you know, like you didn't have any choice but to learn some history or just be a part of that cycle of it where you just destroy yourself real quick. That wasn't an option. But that curiosity, if we could foster that sense of curiosity, which I think is a mystical thing, and we could use this mystical power that is running us, that's keeping us curious and energized when we should be tired, then that could spread. It's just like a vibration, just like music spreads. And hopefully the internet will speed that up as it speeds up all the horrible shit. And that's us, man. We got to step up. Like you said, somebody just has to step up and tackle that guy.
Right. We have to stand up. It's our turn to stand up now. And we got to be the Ben Franklins, because think about Franklin and the thing I was telling you, he was able to get the Southerners to understand, oh, wait a minute, there are people that enslave white people on this planet too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This day. And so when you don't put your shoes in another man, you can't walk a mile in another man's shoes, you'll never understand people.
You think people have these blinders on. They live in these bubbles. You know how many white slaves are in America right now? How many Eastern European girls are stuck in some massage parlor with no green card, no papers of any kind? They probably flew over here on a private plane with some Jeffrey Epstein types. They have nothing. They're literally sex slaves. Blonde, white, all over Atlanta, Charlotte, New York, LA, pick a city, everywhere.
All over the world.
We talk about all the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Nobody talks about the little boys. The Arabs, those rich those super, not all of them, but the little rich super 1.001% vampire people, they like young blonde boys.
Well, start tracing back into the church and you'll see an amazing thing of perversion there, an amazing amount of perversion. And
when you forbid people from having sex, it's like that balloon's going to come out on the other side. Like, come on.
I've never had a Catholic in my life that didn't have a story to tell me about some improper behavior.
Man, my dad was raised Catholic. He was
like that. They were the political thing for years and years. They're the reason that our country was made as a freedom of religion, because they didn't want to have it that way.
We had Bill Summers on the podcast.
Do whatever you want with religion here.
Yeah. Bill Summers was telling us you had to get permission from the Catholic Church to own slaves here. You couldn't just go own them.
Right.
You had to get permission from the Pope to own slaves.
Talk about in California, what they did to the Indians here.
Yeah.
Or anywhere in the world. Oh, they're lazy. Why do they don't have to do what they don't want to grind your corn and they don't want to do your work?
They want to grind their own. They want to do their own work and get the fruits of their own labor.
They have their own world. Yeah. It's that thing of when, but that's the way it is, you know. And
it is. That's the way it is. I just wish they'd let black people have some casinos.
You know, you guys would have loaded dice and shit. Forget it.
Hey, and what's all right for everybody else, but we can't do it.
Oh, Stagger Lee would come out everywhere, man.
Hey, come on, the house always wins. Why can't we do it? Why can't we do it? Man, we love you so much.
That's the thing right there that people don't understand. That when you got your your foot on somebody's neck, they don't get the chance generation after generation. Like that, those black people. I think it's in Florida. They just got awarded this amazing piece of property that was taken from them because they bought it at the right time. And they
what my ancestors own. My great. There's a statue of him in Key West. Man, all that part he owns is worth billions.
Wow.
There's a park named after him in Key West, Florida, Nelson English Park. I went to it with my kids.
How about
I held Nigel up to that statue, and they had to leave because they were well off. They came from free blacks from the beginning, and they were well off, and they just had to leave their land because it was like, either I'm gonna have to kill this guy or I gotta leave because I'm black. And he looked white to me, but he was black, and he just left all his land behind.
Jeez.
I mean, billions of dollars, all that. You see a statue of it. So, yeah.
Well,
that casino, Jack.
The slave owners would breed their own children and put them into slavery. I mean, it's insane. And when you see, people's skin, and a guy can be white is white, and then he's going to have to be known as black because he
my grandmother
or one
great grandmother. Yeah.
And they have, in Louisiana, I always remember, it blew my mind when they'd have signs, octoroon, and they had every type, high yeller, they had every name for every color skin. They weren't letting you get away with nothing. It's the same
like
thing.
A caste system.
The question they asked you was, what religion was your grandmother? And they were going back a couple of generations to wipe out what they wipe out.
What was your grandmother? She's like, I don't even know.
Yeah, right?
We didn't speak I never learned the old mother tongue.
But doesn't it have to boil down to whether or not you're operating from a place of love or a place of fear?
All it is.
It really isn't it? Doesn't it just come to that it's like if you're coming from a place of love, if you're coming from a place of fear, because fear could be loss of money, loss of power, loss of what you thought was the truth. And now it's not status, whatever it may be. If you're coming from love, you're kind of like, well, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I can learn from this. Maybe I want to experience more. Maybe that curiosity thing, right? I know love and fear are two very high, the list goes down from there, but I don't know. If you've got love in your heart, how are you going to
go through this period of one more horrible war type thing, and we're going to break through into a world of peace and understanding, or there's going to be nothing because we're at the end of the line, brother.
Right,
we are.
Yeah, the earth is going like you guys are running out, man. You guys,
the climate's like, hey,
settle your shit quick. Yeah, tuck your pants into your socks. Yeah.
You know, we can go down and say all these platitudes, but when somebody comes over to you and he's wearing, you know, a different shirt color than you and he wants to punch you in the face, you're going to have to make a decision.
Of course. Yeah. No, absolutely.
You want to run and go around the corner and then drop a brick on him. I don't care. Whatever you do to get out of it, you know, but if you got an equal amount of force as he has, you have to use it.
Right.
And that's what comes down to the end of politics. That's the end of politics.
Yes.
Right.
And so we're very close to that right now.
Thank God. We need to be at the end of politics, man, because it's been the money. It's just, you can't undo it. It just has to implode on itself, which it is. We can see these systems like it's not working. It's not working. What Bill Walton posted, that second to last, well, it was the one where he was telling the story about the dudes coming up in his backyard and on his front porch. And I was just like, he's like, I've been living here for 43 years, man. And this has turned into a nightmare.
Movie. Yeah,
it's a dystopian movie. And so I'm with you, Steve. People, let's rise up. Let's get together, realize who the real enemy is. Please, you know. Please, y'all. Jesus.
Well, thank you guys for letting me blow my horn today. I just wanted to do a different show with you guys. Well, I think we did. And we can still do others now, too.
I thought the first two and this one were perfect.
Yeah,
Steve.
Well, there was good points in all of them. I just thought, hey, you know, we got to go somewhere different now.
Sure, of course. Yeah, and every time you come back, we can.
Sure, I know that now. And free discussion is important. Thanks for letting me, you know, get all that off my chest, because I was thinking about don't understand where people are at. If they're on a stage, Bobby always said to me, he said, you know, when you're out there on that lip, man, it's not in this world or that. It's in another place. And people see you as a different thing. They don't see all the issues. They don't know all the stuff that got you to that spot, you know? Yeah. And it's that way for everybody. I'm going to leave with this point. Jerry used to love all, you know, with plays and any kind of expression of arts. And if you ever read Eugene O'Neill, and he was an American playwright, they say.
Amazing, yeah.
And his last play, Long Day's Journey into Night, is just like Jerry's life, only it's twisted up in a jumble. It's the same problems that happen to everybody in art. Yeah. You suffer. You suffer on that stage. You suffer. I don't care who you are. You one time ate out of a plastic play thing that you found somewhere. You were hungry. You know what it is to suffer, or your art is different. Mm. So that always came from everything. You know, we got to remember that. We can always rebuild in a better way. Thank you for letting me preach.
Absolutely. Amens all the way around, brother.
Anytime, ever. It's always an honor. It's always an honor.
Always,
Before we let you go, can I ask you one thing? What's happening with Grizzly Peak? Can you share a little bit of news? Are you heading into new states?
Well, yes, we are getting courted very heavily because we've been very successful with the branding of it. And we've held our own for where a lot of companies are dropping by the wayside. And it's really difficult. You have to move really slow because politics are involved in everything. Yeah. You have now, through the connections of our world that we have, we're moving into some other states, but it's just in the very early stages, and it's really good, though. It's going to be great.
Good.
And we're doing really good. California is a beautiful market and one of the best. And we're up in the top of that. We're on the top of that pile. So that's a good, but it takes hard work and knowing what you're doing. So many people, even in that world, have so much misconstrue things and don't understand down before and even how it all works.
Yeah.
It's like international waters now, you know, like everyone's a grower, everyone's a edible maker, everyone. And it's like, no, you're not.
They need to listen to them old heads.
No. You know, just go back to smoking and fucking making plans that you're never going to see through, you know? But thanks,
people
Steve.
Don't even know what seeds are. Some people don't even know what clones are. They don't even understand what the plant in the natural state is.
Right.
There's so many confusing stuff about cannabinoids and how there's thousands of cannabinoids and they all do different things. It's a very complex plant. And the government rules are so draconian on taxing. They're making it so hard for people to make a living. And the stupidity of keeping Schedule 1 makes it so it has to all be cash. So you're asking for people to come in and you're asking for there to be, you every dispensary you go to, you see these giant safes full of cash. And it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And people are that our laws are really idiotic.
And then all it takes is one of those bad stories to be magnified, and then other states are going to go, see, we don't want that in our state, so no, forget it. So it's like, it's in this weird thing where one bad story can slide you back 10 steps progress, and that's the thing that sucks.
Yeah, they can't stop this, so.
The voice of the people, yes, sir. The Vox Populi in every state. When you see states like North Dakota and South Dakota even having it on the ballot, I thought
Missouri,
the long run, it should have passed Missouri. That's a big deal. But Missouri's a party. When North Dakota and South Dakota pass it, I'll know we got them all.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't know the government growing places was in Mississippi. We used to smoke what we called number 13 weed. Because they had a field called 13. It was a really good weed because that was what they always knew, that it was needed as a medicine to certain people. And they gave people medicine for a long time, the government did. Anyway, let's do another show about that. I'll let you guys go.
Yeah, we love you, man.
Love you, Steve.
So much, Steve.
Thank you. When is this going to be out? How does it go out to the public now? It goes on YouTube or
and audio podcasts like players like Apple, Spotify, things like that. But when it comes out, which will be in December, I don't know. But we'll send it to you and we'll tag in all that crap so you can share it and see it and things like that. But we'll send you a link for sure.
Thanks, guys. Have a great Thanksgiving. Oh, we didn't even talk about Thanksgiving.
Well, it'll be out after Thanksgiving, so no biggie.
It'll also be by Christmas.
I think we did our Thanksgiving recording in August. So
okay, good.
Thank you so much, Steve. Love you, buddy.